Private pages confess what mouths deny. Welcome to Clue Law. I am your host, Vale. Comment where you're watching from today. Your voices mean everything. Let's start. If you've never watched a man wage war without leaving his chair, you've missed one of nature's rare exhibitions. Like an orchid blooming out of season or a politician telling the truth by accident. Nero Wolfe did it with a book, a bell, and a look that could turn a fresh idea into a confession. It was a Tuesday, with the kind of January chill that makes New York sound like it's grinding its teeth. I had just finished dictating a letter to Fritz. Yes, dictating to the chef, because Fritz had opinions about punctuation and I had opinions about Fritz having opinions, when the doorbell rang. I glanced at the clock, 11:17, and too late for the morning's first nuisance and too early for lunch, which meant it was going to be something worse. A client. From the office doorway, I could see Wolfe in his chair, the big one behind his desk that looked like it had been designed for a Russian Tsar who disliked exercise. Wolfe's eyes were on his book, a volume of something in a language that always sounded to me like a throat clearing with ambition. I said, "Doorbell." Wolfe didn't move. I said, "I'll get it." "That is what you're for." He turned a page with a finger that looked like it had been trained to do one thing at a time and do it well. I went to the front hall and opened the door. The man on the stoop had the kind of face you see on people who ask questions in courtrooms and smile while doing it. Mid-40s, clean-shaven, a hair neat enough to be a moral argument, overcoat that cost more than my first car. He held his hat in his left hand and a book in his right, except it wasn't a book. It was a journal, leather-bound, with a clasp like it had secrets. "Mr. Goodwin?" he asked, as if he'd seen me before but didn't want to admit where. "That's me," I said. "If you're selling salvation, we're stocked." He smiled in a way that suggested he'd laughed once in college and didn't want to make a habit of it. "My name is Calvin R. Barrington. I'd like to see Mr. Wolfe. You and half the city." I stood aside. "Come in, Mr. Barrington. Remove your overcoat if you plan to stay long enough to regret it." He stepped inside with a carefulness that made me think he'd been taught never to spill anything on expensive rugs, not even blood. He took off his gloves and folded them as if they were legal documents and followed me toward the office. Wolfe didn't look up when we entered. He knew someone had come in. Wolfe always knew. It was one of his most irritating talents. The man stopped 2 feet from the desk like he'd hit a boundary line. "Mr. Wolfe," he said. Wolfe raised his eyes slowly, a process like a curtain lifting on a stage where the actor doesn't care if the audience is ready. "Sir." Barrington held out the leather-bound journal, both hands now, like an offering. "I have a matter," he said, "that requires discretion and, if I may use the word, intelligence." Wolfe's nostrils flared, a sign I've learned to translate as, "Someone is flattering me incorrectly. I will tolerate it for money." Wolfe said, "Sit down, Mr. Barrington." Barrington sat in the red leather chair facing the desk. He kept the journal on his lap. His posture was upright, but his fingers tightened on the clasp, and that told me he wasn't nearly as comfortable as he was pretending. Wolfe asked, "You have brought a book?" Barrington swallowed. "A diary." "A diary," Wolfe repeated, as if tasting the word and deciding it was inferior to dessert. "Whose?" Barrington's eyes flicked to me and back. "Not mine." Wolfe's lips moved, barely. "Then why do you present it to me?" Barrington cleared his throat. "Because it has become a point of leverage, a point of vulnerability, and I'm not in the habit of being leveraged." Wolfe's gaze traveled to the diary. "You have it." "For the moment," Barrington said quickly. "But that's the trouble. It is not—" He hesitated. "Properly mine to have." I leaned against the file cabinet. "That's a nice way of saying you stole it." Barrington gave me a look that had been polished in boardrooms. "I retrieved it," I said, "from someone's pocket or their bedroom." Barrington's jaw tightened. He didn't answer me. He looked at Wolfe as if I was an unpleasant lamp. Wolfe said, "Mr. Goodwin is not a lamp. He is my associate. You will answer his questions when I do not choose to." Barrington blinked, and for the first time his composure slipped enough to show something under it. Fatigue, maybe, or fear. "Very well," he said. "I took it from an office." "Which office?" I asked. Barrington's mouth opened, then closed. "Not mine." That made my eyebrows go up. Wolfe noticed. Wolfe misses very little when he's bored. Wolfe said, "You will be explicit, Mr. Barrington, or you will be brief elsewhere." Barrington drew a long breath. "Does it belongs to Miss Lenore Voss?" The name didn't ring a bell with me. It didn't ring a bell with Wolfe either, but you couldn't tell because Wolfe's face is a bell tower. It looks the same whether it's ringing or not. Barrington continued. "Miss Voss was an executive assistant at Kestrel and Vale." That rang a bell. Kestrel and Vale was one of those public relations firms that handled reputations like they were delicate antique china, except they were usually handling reputations that had been dropped, kicked, and chewed by dogs. Wolfe's eyes narrowed slightly. "And you are?" Barrington's voice became more careful. "General counsel." Wolfe's eyebrows rose. "Ah, then you have a profession devoted to other people's trouble." Barrington ignored that. "Miss Voss kept a diary. I have reason to believe it contains information that could damage my firm, my clients, and certain individuals." I said, "Including you." Barrington didn't like how quickly I said it. He said, "Possibly." Wolfe asked, "If it contains damaging information, why has it not already damaged you?" Barrington's knuckles whitened on the clasp. "Because until 2 days ago, no one knew it existed, except Miss Voss. She is a meticulous person. She writes in it daily." "And now?" Wolfe asked. Barrington's mouth tightened. "Now she is missing." That got my attention and I straightened. Wolfe didn't move, but I could feel the air change in the room the way it does before a thunderstorm. Except here, the thunder wore a suit and sat behind a desk. "Missing," Wolfe said. Barrington nodded once. "She did not come to work yesterday. She did not answer her phone. She did not respond to messages. This morning, communication arrived at my office." He reached into his coat pocket and produced an envelope, placed it on Wolfe's desk, then slid it toward him with the carefulness of a man moving a snake. Wolfe looked at the envelope, but did not touch it. "Open it, Archie." "Of course." I crossed, picked it up, and opened it. Inside was a folded sheet of paper with a single sentence typed in blocky letters. "Keep the diary safe. You will be told what to do. Do not involve the police. No signature, no flourish. Just cold instruction." I looked at Barrington. "That's charming. Who sent it?" Barrington spread his hands slightly. "That is precisely what I wish to determine." Wolfe said, "If Miss Voss is missing, why do you bring me her diary rather than the police?" Barrington's eyes flickered, the way eyes do when they come close to the truth and back away for safety. "Because if the police become involved, the contents of that diary may become discoverable, and because whoever wrote that note is not bluffing." I said, "How do you know that?" Barrington hesitated again, and this time the hesitation had weight. "Because Miss Voss called me 2 nights ago from a number I didn't recognize. She said she had made a mistake. She said she was frightened. She said there were people at the firm who had been watching her." "Did she say who?" I asked. "No," Barrington said. "She hung up. I tried to call back. The number was blocked." Wolfe's eyes were on Barrington's face now, heavy and still, and like a large cat considering whether the smaller animal is worth eating. "So you stole her diary," Wolfe said, "because it contains something you fear will be used against you, and because you wish to control the use of it." Barrington stiffened. "I wish to prevent harm," Wolfe's mouth twitched. A noble aspiration. It is rare in general counsel. Barrington's ears reddened. Mr. Wolfe. Wolfe held up a hand, palm outward, a gesture that could stop a train if the train had manners. I am not yet persuaded that your problem is mine. Barrington leaned forward. Mr. Wolfe, if that diary is released, reputations will be destroyed, careers ruined. Some of the clients involved are prominent. Wolfe looked bored again. Prominence is not virtue. Barrington's voice lowered. And if it is not released, if I follow their instructions, Miss Voss may be harmed. That was better. Wolfe's eyes sharpened, not with pity. Wolfe's pity comes out only in rare, controlled doses, but with interest. Intellectual justice, he'd once called it. He enjoyed putting the crooked line back into shape, even if the paper tore. Wolfe said, "Bring me facts, Mr. Barrington, not melodrama. Who benefits from Miss Voss's disappearance? Who has access to her? Who knew she kept a diary?" Barrington hesitated. There are several possibilities. I said, "That's a lawyer's way of saying you've got suspects." Barrington's gaze flicked to me, then back to Wolfe. 4 people, primarily. Wolfe's eyes remained steady. Name them. Barrington shifted in his chair. He wasn't comfortable naming them here in Wolfe's office, beings where words became nails and sometimes coffins. He said, "First, Hollis Vale, partner at the firm, brilliant, volatile. Miss Voss worked directly for him." I said, "That sounds like a fun boss." Barrington continued. "Second, Maris Kestrel, the other partner. She is," he paused, "controlled. She controls everything." Wolfe nodded slightly as if he approved of control in the abstract. "Third," Barrington said, "Dante Rook, a consultant, not officially on the payroll, but involved. Miss Voss disliked him." "And fourth?" Wolfe asked. Barrington's eyes went a shade darker. "Elliot Brann, a client liaison. Charming, popular. He and Miss Voss had history." History. That's one of those words that can mean anything from a shared coffee to a shared crime. Wolfe asked, "And you, Mr. Barrington?" Barrington's mouth tightened. I'm not a suspect." I said, "Sure you're not." Wolfe's eyes shifted to me, a warning. Wolfe has rules about when I can needle a client and when I should let the client hang himself with his own rope. Wolfe said, "Mr. Barrington, what do you want of me?" Barrington's voice became crisp, as if he'd finally reached the part of the script he'd rehearsed. "I want you to identify who has taken Miss Voss, recover her safely, and neutralize the diary." "Neutralize," I said. "Like a bomb." "Yes," Barrington said, "if necessary." Wolfe said, "And if it is necessary, you will be pleased." Barrington did not answer that, which was answer enough. Wolfe leaned back slightly, his hands resting on the chair arms. He looked at the diary, then at Barrington, then briefly at me. That glance at me was worth 3 paragraphs of Wolfe's internal reasoning, and if he ever let it show. He said, "You will leave the diary here." Barrington's head snapped up. "Here. In my house," Wolfe said, "where my interests are protected." Barrington hesitated. It was the first time he seemed truly alarmed, not by threats from anonymous note writers, but by the idea of leaving that diary out of his reach. Wolfe watched him with the calm patience of a man who knows he can starve longer than you. Barrington swallowed. "Yes," he said finally. He placed the diary on Wolfe's desk. Wolfe did not touch it. He said, "Archie." I sighed, because when Wolfe says my name like that, it means my shoes are about to do all the thinking that Wolfe's chair refuses to. "Yes," I said. Wolfe's eyes stayed on Barrington. "Telephone Inspector Kramer." Barrington jerked slightly. "No police," he said, and then for the first time there was real panic in his voice. "The note." Wolfe's face remained a stone wall with a Latin dictionary behind it. "Mr. Barrington," Wolfe said, "you're in my house. I will decide what my house requires." Barrington's hands clenched. "Mr. Wolfe, Wolfe cut him off smoothly. "If you wish to preserve your diary and your dignity, you will remain quiet. Archie will call Mr. Kramer." I blinked. That was not typical. Wolfe doesn't call Kramer unless he smells a corpse or expects one. I looked at Wolfe. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. I said, "Sure, I'll dial the law." As I reached for the phone, I couldn't help glancing at the diary. It sat there, fat and innocent looking, like a pet that had bitten someone. The clasp caught the light. I had the distinct, unpleasant feeling that before the day was over, that little clasp would open, one way or another, and whatever was inside would crawl out into Wolfe's brownstone like a rat with a grudge. And Wolfe, sitting perfectly still, had already decided it was worth letting it in. Barrington didn't say another word while I dialed Kramer. He sat there with his hands folded as if he were waiting for a verdict he hoped wouldn't involve him. Wolfe watched him the way a chess player watches the board after sacrificing a piece. Calm, confident, and already 3 moves ahead. Kramer answered on the 3rd ring, which meant he was in his office and in a mood. "Kramer," he barked. "Archie Goodwin," I said. "I'm calling from West 35th. Wolfe would like a word." There was a pause long enough for me to imagine Kramer rolling his eyes. "Is there a body?" "Not yet," I said. "But there's a diary with ambitions." Another pause. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said, and hung up. I replaced the receiver and turned. Barrington was staring at Wolfe as if Wolfe had just calmly announced he was going to rearrange the man's spine. "You said no police," Barrington said, his voice tight. "I said I would decide," Wolfe replied. "You will find that decision immutable." Barrington stood. "Then I must insist." "You will sit," Wolfe said, not raising his voice, not moving an inch. Barrington did sit. Slowly, the chair creaked in sympathy. Wolfe turned his attention to me. "Archie, the diary." "Want me to read it?" I asked. "Certainly not," Wolfe said. "I wish to preserve my appetite." I grinned. "Fair," Wolfe continued. "Examine it. Do not open it. Tell me what you observe." I crossed to the desk and picked it up. That it was heavier than it looked, which meant paper, not padding. The leather was good quality, worn but cared for. No initials on the cover. The clasp was brass, slightly tarnished, but the hinge was new. Too new. "Clasp's been replaced," I said. Barrington stiffened. Wolfe's eyes flicked to him. "Recently?" "Looks that way," I said. "Leather's older than the hardware. Someone wanted to be sure it stayed shut, or could be shut." I turned it over. The spine was intact, no obvious false compartments. The edges of the pages were uneven, handwritten diary, not a manufactured blank. "There's something else," I said. "Yes," Wolfe said patiently. "It smells," I said. "Faintly, like lavender," and I sniffed again. "Ozone. Ever been near a copy room right after the machines run hot?" Wolfe's eyebrows rose a millimeter. "Interesting," Barrington said. "What does that mean?" I shrugged. "Means somebody spent time around this thing with more than a pen." I set the diary down exactly where it had been. Wolfe nodded once, satisfied. At that moment, Fritz appeared in the doorway, his expression carefully neutral, which, for Fritz, meant curiosity wrapped in professional restraint. "Mr. Wolfe," he said, "luncheon will be delayed 15 minutes. The duck has opinions." Wolfe sighed. "Very well. Inform it that it is not in charge." Fritz's eyes flicked to Barrington, then to the diary, then back to Wolfe. He nodded and withdrew, silently, like a man who had just witnessed the opening move of a long game and knew better than to comment. Barrington cleared his throat. "Mr. Wolfe, I must ask, what is your intention?" Wolfe regarded him. "My intention is to discover who benefits most from your fear." Barrington opened his mouth, then closed it again. The doorbell rang. "That will be Inspector Kramer," Wolfe said. I went to get him. Kramer came in with his coat unbuttoned and his hat tilted back, which meant he'd come fast and hadn't liked it. "What's this about?" he demanded, stepping into the office and spotting Barrington. "And who's the stiff?" Barrington bristled. "I beg your pardon." Kramer ignored him and looked at Wolfe. "All right, genius. Talk." Wolfe gestured minimally. "Inspector, this man is Calvin Barrington. He represents a firm whose employee, Nero Wolfe, is missing. This diary belongs to her." Kramer's eyes sharpened. "Missing how?" "Absent," Wolfe said. "Unreachable, possibly abducted." Kramer's jaw set. "Then why the hell didn't you call me yesterday?" Barrington started to answer. Wolfe cut him off with a raised finger. "Because," Wolfe said, "Mr. Barrington feared publicity more than peril. He feared the contents of that diary." Kramer looked at Barrington like he was measuring him for a cell. "What's in the diary?" "No idea," I said, "but it smells like trouble and toner." Kramer snorted. "That's a new one." Wolfe continued calmly. "Inspector, you will not seize this diary." Kramer's eyebrows climbed. "I won't?" "No," Wolfe said. "Not yet. You will, however, investigate the disappearance of Nero Wolfe." "That part I was going to do anyway," Kramer said. "With or without your permission?" Wolfe nodded. "Naturally. I will assist by identifying the responsible party." Kramer crossed his arms. "And why should I let you sit on evidence?" "Because," Wolfe said, "if you take it now, the person who wrote that note will act precipitously, and Miss Voss may suffer." Kramer grimaced. He didn't like being maneuvered, but he liked dead victims even less. "Damn it, Wolfe," he muttered. "You always do this." Wolfe's lips curved faintly. "It has worked before." Kramer turned to Barrington. You're coming with me." Barrington paled. "Am I under arrest?" "Not yet," Kramer said. "But you're going to answer some questions in a room with fewer orchids." Barrington stood on legs that didn't quite trust him anymore. He glanced at the diary one last time, like a man leaving a loved one in questionable hands. When they were gone, the house felt quieter, but not safer. I went back to the desk. "So," I said, "we've got a missing woman, and a diary nobody wants opened, 4 suspects with polished resumes, and a note that says, 'Behave.' What's the angle?" Wolfe closed his book at last. "The diary is not leverage," he said. "It is bait." "For whom?" "For the person who altered it," Wolfe said. "The clasp, the scent. Someone has already been inside." I frowned. "Then why didn't they just take it?" "Because," Wolfe said, "they wished it to be found, but under controlled circumstances. Mr. Barrington's panic was predictable." "And Miss Voss?" Wolfe's eyes hardened. "Alive. For now. A diary is useless if its author is dead too soon." I leaned back. "You're betting on that?" "I am calculating," Wolfe corrected. "Now, Archie, you will visit Kestrel and Vale." "Field trip," I said. "Any particular order?" "Yes," Wolfe said. "Begin with Hollis Vale. Any volatile men leave fingerprints on ideas?" "And the diary?" I asked. Wolfe reached out at last and placed one massive hand over the leather cover. Not possessive, but proprietary. "It will remain exactly where it is," he said. "Anyone who wishes to interfere with it will have to disturb my house." I whistled softly. "That's personal." Wolfe met my eyes. "Precisely." I left the brownstone with the uneasy feeling you get when you've just locked the door on something that might not stay put out of courtesy. Wolfe stayed behind with the diary. Fritz, and a house that had suddenly become a magnet for bad intentions. If anyone tried to disturb it, Wolfe would notice the way a spider notices a tremor in its web. Kestrel and Vale occupied 3 polished floors of a midtown building that smelled like carpet cleaner and ambition. And I announced myself to a receptionist who smiled like she'd been trained to do it in a mirror. "I'm here to see Mr. Hollis Vale," I said. She blinked. "Do you have an appointment?" "Not unless he made one in his sleep." That smile tightened. She made a call, murmured, listened, then nodded. "Mr. Vale can see you. Please go to Conference B." Conference B was glass, chrome, and views of the city that made you feel replaceable. Hollis Vale was already there, pacing. He was tall, sharp-featured, and wound tight enough to power a small generator. His tie was loose, his jacket off, his sleeves rolled up like he was ready to fight paperwork. He stopped pacing when he saw me. "Who the hell are you?" "Archie Goodwin," I said. "I work for Nero Wolfe." That landed. Vale's eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Lenore Voss," I said. "Ring a bell?" His jaw flexed. "She didn't show up for work. I've already spoken to the police." "Not enough," I said. "You were her direct superior." "Which means," he snapped, "which means you were the last person she'd disappoint voluntarily." He scoffed. That girl was meticulous. Neurotic, even. She'd call if she was running 5 minutes late. "Did she call you?" I asked. He hesitated just long enough to count. "No." I leaned against the table. "She keep a diary?" His reaction was quick and sloppy. "What?" "Diary," I repeated. "Leather. Brass clasp." Vale laughed, but it was brittle. "That's ridiculous. I don't keep track of my assistant's hobbies." "Someone did," I said. "Someone replaced the clasp." He stopped laughing. "Are you accusing me of something?" "I'm observing," I said. "You strike me as a man who likes control. Or did Lenore have something you couldn't control?" Vale turned away, went to the window. "You don't know anything about this place." "Then tell me," I said. He exhaled. Lenore was observant. She noticed patterns, clients, expenses. She asked questions. "Dangerous hobby," I said. "She was told to stop," Vale said. "She didn't." "By you." "By Maris," he said. "Kestrel doesn't like surprises." That was interesting. "Did Lenore say she was frightened?" Vale's shoulders stiffened. "No." "Did she say she was leaving?" "No." "Did she say anything unusual?" Vale turned back, eyes sharp. "She asked me if loyalty had an expiration date." I whistled. "That's philosophical for an assistant." "She was reading too much," Vale snapped. "Listening to the wrong people." "Like Dante Rook?" I asked. Vale's lip curled. "That parasite." I smiled. "Yes, I'll take that as a yes." I left Vale simmering and took an elevator down 1 floor to Maris Kestrel's office. If Vale was a live wire, Kestrel was a locked vault. She rose from behind her desk when I entered, elegant, composed, eyes that missed nothing and forgave less. "Mr. Goodwin," she said, "I was told you might come." "Always nice to be expected," I said. She gestured to a chair. I didn't sit. "Lenore Voss," I said. Her face didn't change. "A valued employee." "Valued enough to monitor?" She folded her hands. "This firm handles sensitive information." "Lenore wrote it down," I said, daily. Kestrel's eyes flicked just once. "I'm not interested in speculation." "Then be interested in facts," I said. "Someone altered her diary. Someone wanted it found but not read. Someone wanted leverage." Kestrel's smile was thin. "And you think that someone is me?" "I think," I said, "you knew Lenore was keeping records. I think you underestimated how personal they'd become." She stood. "You're treading close to defamation." "I'm strolling through motive," I said. "Who else knew?" She hesitated. Elliot Brann. History, I said. Regret, she corrected. They were involved, briefly. And Dante Rook. Her mouth tightened. He encouraged Lenore. He likes chaos. Where can I find him? I asked. She gave me an address like she was handing over a bad habit. Rook's office was downtown, in a building that had given up pretending to be respectable. He opened the door himself, grinning, eyes bright, hair artfully disheveled. Archie Goodwin, he said. Nero Wolfe's errand boy. Consultant, I said. You knew Lenore Voss. Knew her mind, he said. She was brilliant. She was scared, I said. Of being erased, Rook said. She saw how this place works. Did you read her diary? I asked. He laughed. She wouldn't let anyone read it. Did you touch it? I asked. He paused. I advised her. To do what? To protect herself, he said. To make copies. That made my ears perk up. Copies. He smiled wider. Information wants insurance. I left Rook and went back uptown to Elliot Brann, who met me at a bar before I could ask. He was charming, handsome, and already halfway into a drink. Lenore? He said softly when I mentioned her. She deserved better. Did you take her diary? I asked. He looked genuinely hurt. No. Did you see it recently? Yes, he said. She showed me an entry. About Barrington. That fit too neatly. When I got back to the brownstone, Wolfe was waiting, and I reported. He listened, eyes half-lidded, absorbing. Rook mentioned copies, I finished. Wolfe nodded. Then the diary here is a decoy. Which means the real threat is elsewhere, I said. Yes, Wolfe said. And someone will come for this one tonight to confirm its status. As if on cue, there was a faint sound upstairs, not loud enough for anyone but a man who lived by routine and disruption. Wolfe's eyes opened fully. Archie, he said calmly, our guest has arrived. Wolfe didn't raise his voice or move from his chair. He didn't need to. When a man who weighs 1/7 of a ton says our guest has arrived in that calm, resigned tone, it's not a question, it's an assignment. I was already on my feet. The sound upstairs had been faint, not a footstep exactly, more like a careful negotiation with gravity. Someone who knew houses, someone who thought silence was a skill instead of a habit. I reached the hall just as the sound came again, this time unmistakably a drawer easing shut. Not slammed, not hurried. That was the part I didn't like. I took the stairs 2 at a time, quietly enough to keep my conscience clean. The guest bedroom door was ajar by 3 inches. Light spilled out, not the overhead, but a table lamp. That narrowed it down. Someone who knew where the switches were or didn't want to risk them. I pushed the door open. The man inside froze with a folded piece of paper in his hand. He was youngish, late 30s, lean, wearing black that tried too hard to blend in. His eyes flicked to me, then to the door behind me, calculating angles. Easy, I said. You're in a house where shouting is frowned upon. He bolted anyway. I stepped aside just enough to let him make the mistake of thinking he had space. He didn't. I caught him at the landing, tangled him up with the banister, and introduced his shoulder to the wall. He went down without elegance, and I pinned him there until he stopped pretending resistance was a viable option. Stay, I told him. I'll get the landlord. I marched him downstairs by the collar. Wolfe watched the descent with interest but no surprise, like a man observing the final move of a puzzle he'd already solved. Put him in the red chair, Wolfe said. I did. The intruder sat there, breathing hard, eyes darting, hands empty now. I noticed that immediately. Wolfe looked at him. You have been in my house, he said mildly. This was unwise. The man swallowed. I didn't take anything. That, Wolfe said, remains to be seen. Wolfe turned his gaze to me. Archie. Bedroom, I said. Desk drawer. He had a paper. Wolfe nodded once. Which paper? I searched the intruder. Wallet, keys, thin phone, no paper. His pockets were clean in the way that suggests forethought. Wolfe's eyes returned to the man. You will tell me where you placed it. I don't know what you mean, the man said. Wolfe sighed, a deep, patient sound, like a professor disappointed in a promising student. Mr. Goodwin, he said, please retrieve the diary. I did. It was exactly where Wolfe had left it. That didn't relax me. Wolfe studied the clasp. His fingers hovered over it without touching. Then he nodded faintly. Someone opened it, he said. My stomach sank. I told you I didn't open it, the intruder said quickly. You did not, Wolfe agreed. As you checked it. The man stared. Wolfe continued, you wished to confirm whether the diary here was intact. You did not remove anything because removal was not your purpose. The man's jaw tightened. Wolfe looked at me. Search the wastebasket in the guest room. I went back up. The wastebasket was empty except for a single folded page tucked neatly at the bottom, as if it had been placed there with courtesy. I unfolded it. It was a photocopy, typed text, a diary entry, dated 3 weeks earlier. It detailed a meeting at Kestrel and Vale, names, conversations, an expense coded to a client that didn't exist, and one line underlined twice. Barrington knows. Kestrel approved. Vale denied. I brought it down. Wolfe read it once, then again, slower. Thank you, he said. This confirms it. The intruder laughed weakly. So now you know. Yes, Wolfe said, and now I know who sent you. The man looked up sharply. You work for Dante Rook, Wolfe said. He is cautious but curious. He wanted confirmation that the diary had been neutralized. When it was not, he sent you. I won't say anything, the man said. You already have, Wolfe replied. Wolfe leaned back. Lenore Voss made copies of her diary entries. She distributed them carefully. Mr. Rook advised her to do so, not out of altruism, but because he understood leverage. He also understood timing. Wolfe's eyes hardened. He did not anticipate that one copy would return here, altered to provoke fear. The man slumped slightly. Lenore is alive, Wolfe continued. Mr. Rook would not risk killing his investment. Mr. Vale is too impulsive. Miss Kestrel too controlled. Mr. Brand too sentimental. Now that leaves Mr. Barrington. The intruder shook his head. Barrington didn't take her. No, Wolfe said. He panicked. He retrieved the diary. He became useful. Wolfe folded his hands. Ms. Kestrel authorized the concealment of fraudulent accounts. Mr. Vale benefited. Mr. Barrington facilitated. Lenore documented. Mr. Rook exploited. Silence settled like dust. Wolfe said, the only question remaining is who attempted to silence Lenore prematurely. The intruder looked up slowly. That wasn't the plan. Exactly, Wolfe said. Someone acted without coordination. Wolfe turned to me. Archie, telephone Inspector Kramer. I did. When Kramer arrived, Wolfe handed him the photocopied page and spoke quietly. Kramer read, cursed, read again, then looked at the intruder. Looks like you're done running errands, Kramer said. So they took him away. Afterward, Wolfe sat alone with the diary again. Fritz served dinner. The house settled. I poured myself a drink. So, I said, where's Lenore? Wolfe picked up his fork. In a hotel in Queens, he said. Mr. Rook placed her there for safekeeping. She will emerge when she believes it profitable. And you'll let that happen? Wolfe chewed thoughtfully. No. Tomorrow she will receive a message. From me. I raised my glass. What will it say? Wolfe swallowed. That the diary has betrayed its owner, and that I do not tolerate disorder in my house or in my cases. I drank to that. Wolfe did not sleep badly that night. I know because he never does when a problem is still arranged neatly on the table, instead of bleeding on the rug. I, on the other hand, slept in layers, one ear open, one eye squinting at shadows, and waiting for the house to decide it had more surprises left. It didn't. Not until morning. At 9:02, Wolfe rang the bell. Fritz appeared. At 9:05, coffee arrived. At 9:07, Wolfe was settled, napkin placed with ceremonial precision, and the diary sat where it had sat since Barrington's hands had trembled over it. Untouched, unmoved, accused by proximity. "Archie," Wolfe said without looking up, "you will telephone Mr. Saul Panza." "Good morning to you too," I said. But I dialed. Saul answered in the tone of a man who had already been awake long enough to be annoyed by it. "Panza." "Morning, Saul. Wolfe wants eyes." "Where?" "Queens. Hotel. Woman named Nero Wolfe." A pause. "Alive?" "Yes." "Trouble?" "Yes." Another pause. "I'll call back." I hung up and looked at Wolfe. "You're expecting movement." "I am provoking it," Wolfe said. "Mr. Rook believes he controls the tempo. He is mistaken." At 9:23, the phone rang again. Saul's voice was lower now. "She's there. Registered under an alias that would fool no one who has ever met a novelist. She's nervous. She's making calls." "To whom?" Wolfe asked. "Rook first," Saul said. "Then someone she argued with. Female. Controlled. Kestrel," Wolfe murmured. I felt the pattern tighten. "She's panicking." "Correct," Wolfe said, "because the diary has ceased to behave." At 10:10, Wolfe dictated a message. Not an email, not a letter, a message. Delivered by a courier Saul trusted to keep his mouth shut and his memory short. It was brief. Wolfe likes brevity when it hurts. "Miss Voss, your diary has been examined. Its copies are unnecessary. Return to the brownstone at noon. Come alone." That was it. No threat, no promise, not just inevitability. "You think she'll come?" I asked. "She will," Wolfe said. "She is intelligent. She understands when a game has reached its end." At 10:42, Inspector Kramer called. "You stirring the pot again, Wolfe?" "I'm clarifying it," Wolfe replied. "You've got Kestrel and Vale in a full sweat," Kramer said. "Barrington's lawyered up. Vale's shouting. Kestrel's calm, which worries me." "As it should," Wolfe said. "You will refrain from action until afternoon." Kramer grunted. "I hate it when you say that." "At 12:30, Wolfe added. "You will enjoy it." Kramer hung up without agreeing, which was as close as he ever came. At 11:15, someone rang the doorbell. Not the expected courier. Too early. I opened it to find Maris Kestrel herself, impeccably dressed, eyes sharp, mouth set in a line that had never known indecision. "Ah, I'm here to see Nero Wolfe," she said. I smiled. "You're early." "I'm precise," she replied. Wolfe heard her voice and called out, "Mr. Goodwin, show Miss Kestrel in." She entered the office like she owned the air. She did not look at the diary. That was the first tell. "Mr. Wolfe," she said, "this situation has become inefficient." Wolfe inclined his head. Inefficiency is the hallmark of guilt. Her lips tightened. Nero Wolfe has information that does not belong to her. Wolfe's eyes were cool. Information belongs to whoever records it accurately. "She violated trust," Kestrel said. "She documented behavior," Wolfe corrected. "There is a difference." Kestrel folded her hands. "What do you want?" Wolfe gestured to the chair. She did not sit. "I want order restored," Wolfe said. "And I want you here when it happens." Her eyes flicked to me. "You're assembling a tableau?" "Yes," Wolfe said. "At noon." She hesitated. That was the second tell. "I will stay," she said. At 11:58, Nero Wolfe arrived. She was smaller than I expected. Pale, tired in the way that comes from thinking too much without sleeping. Her eyes went straight to the diary, then to Wolfe. "You read it," she said. Wolfe shook his head. "I did not need to." She laughed softly, bitterly. "Of course you didn't." She sat without being invited. That was either courage or exhaustion. "I kept records," she said. "I saw things." "Yes," Wolfe said. "I was going to give them to the police," she said. Rook said to wait. "Yes," Wolfe said again. "He said leverage first," Lenore said. "Protection." "And then," Wolfe said, "someone decided to accelerate." Lenore's eyes filled. "They told me to stay quiet. They said the diary would be handled." Wolfe's gaze shifted to Kestrel. "By you?" Kestrel did not deny it. It was necessary. "At whose instruction?" Wolfe asked. Kestrel said nothing. At 12:05, Hollis Vale burst in, red-faced, furious. At 12:07, Barrington arrived with a lawyer, hovering uselessly behind him. At 12:10, Elliot Brand slipped in quietly and took a corner seat, eyes on Lenore. Wolfe surveyed them all. "Now," he said, "we may proceed." The brownstone felt smaller then, packed tight with ambition, fear, and the weight of written words that refused to stay buried. Wolfe had them exactly where he wanted them, not trapped, not accused, just present, which, in his experience, was far more dangerous. And I leaned back against the wall and watched their faces. One of them was already calculating escape. Another was calculating sacrifice. And Wolfe, immovable, had already chosen which calculation would fail. Wolfe did not hurry. He never did, and especially not now, with everyone assembled and the truth already arranged in his head like place cards at a dinner he would not enjoy until the guests had left. He began by looking at Lenore Voss. "You kept a diary," he said, "because you believed facts deserved memory. You made copies because you believed memory deserved protection. You were correct on both counts and wrong about the cost." Lenore's hands were folded tightly in her lap. "I didn't want money," she said. "I wanted it to stop." Wolfe nodded. "It will." He turned to Dante Rook. "You advised her to make copies, not out of concern, but out of opportunity. You anticipated a slow burn, pressure applied judiciously, payments extracted discreetly." Rook smiled faintly. "That's business." "You erred," Wolfe said, "in assuming all participants would share your patience." Wolfe's eyes shifted to Maris Kestrel. "You authorized the concealment of fraudulent billing under client code names. You did so to preserve the firm. When Miss Voss recorded it, you sought to control the record." Kestrel's voice was level. "I protected what I built." "You protected yourself," Wolfe corrected. "When the diary surfaced, you instructed Mr. Barrington to retrieve it." Barrington stiffened. "I acted to prevent harm." "You acted," Wolfe said, "to prevent exposure. When Miss Voss became frightened and unpredictable, you agreed to isolate her, temporarily." Lenore looked at Barrington, eyes wide. "You said it was for my safety." "And so it was," Wolfe said calmly, "until someone attempted to make it permanent." All eyes turned to Hollis Vale. Vale laughed harshly. "This is absurd." "You are impulsive," Wolfe said. "You benefited from the concealment but resented the control. You feared exposure more than consequence. When you learned Miss Voss had copies beyond the diary, you attempted to accelerate the plan." Vale's face reddened. "I didn't touch her." "You did not abduct her," Wolfe said. "You attempted to destroy the evidence, the altered clasp, the ozone from your office copier, the substituted pages designed to mislead and provoke." Vale's mouth opened, then closed. "You believed," Wolfe continued, "that if panic escalated, Ms. Kestrel would sacrifice Mr. Barrington and Mr. Rook would retreat. You underestimated Mr. Rook's caution and Ms. Kestrel's resolve." Vale surged to his feet. "You can't prove." "Inspector Kramer can," Wolfe said mildly. The original copies Miss Voss distributed include timestamps, metadata, and annotations unique to your office systems. Kramer stepped forward. We picked them up this morning. Vale slumped back into his chair. Wolfe turned to Elliot Brann last. You loved Miss Voss? Brann nodded, eyes down. I tried to help her leave. You tried, Wolfe said. You also showed her an entry, thereby confirming Mr. Barrington's involvement. That knowledge frightened her. It hastened events. Brann swallowed. I'm sorry. So am I, Wolfe said. But remorse is not culpability. Wolfe folded his hands. In sum, Mr. Vale attempted to silence evidence. Miss Kestrel authorized concealment. Mr. Barrington facilitated. Mr. Aunt Rook exploited. Miss Voss documented. He paused, letting the room absorb it. The diary betrayed its owner, Wolfe said, not by revealing her sins, but by revealing everyone else's. Kramer cleared his throat. All right, that's enough. He began assigning handcuffs like punctuation. As they were led away, Vale raging, Barrington pale, Kestrel silent, Lenore remained seated, shaking. Wolfe regarded her steadily. You will cooperate fully, he said. You will tell the truth. You will not profit. She nodded. I understand. You will also, Wolfe added, cease keeping diaries. She managed a weak smile. I think I've learned that. When the house finally emptied, the silence returned like a faithful servant. Fritz appeared with dinner. Wolfe settled himself, appetite intact at last. I poured a drink and leaned against the desk. You're clean enough ending, I said. No bodies. Bodies are inefficient, Wolfe replied. They complicate digestion. I glanced at the diary. What happens to it? Wolfe waved a hand. It will be archived, redacted, and rendered harmless. Shame, I said. It caused all this trouble. Wolfe looked at me. No, Archie. It revealed it. He took his first bite, then added, Human folly does not require invention, only record. I raised my glass. To records, then. Wolfe sniffed. To order. And just like that, the brownstone was whole again, quiet, controlled, and perfectly indifferent to the ambitions that had tried and failed to disturb it.